The first thing that felt wrong was how clean the laughter sounded through the glass, like it had been rehearsed in a room where nothing messy was allowed to live. We were outside a place called Holloway House when this story found us, not because it was famous, but because someone was about to be treated like a stranger at an entrance that used to open for her without hesitation. Bryn Holloway works in hospitality, the kind of work that teaches you to read a room before you step into it. What happened to her here matters because the sharpest kind of rejection doesn't come with shouting. It comes with a smile and a reason that sounds responsible. This is the night she still plays back in her head. I slowed down a few steps from the door and let my hand rest on the strap of my bag like that could steady me. No driver, no assistant, just me and the quiet decision I'd made in my car to show up anyway. Sloane was already there, standing just inside the entryway like she'd been placed on purpose. She wore something pale and structured, hair pinned back, mouth set into that soft look that meant she was about to say something mean in a gentle voice. She stepped out before I could reach for the handle. "Bryn." My name came out like a warning and a greeting at the same time. "You shouldn't come in." I kept my face neutral. "It's Mom's birthday." Sloane tilted her head, eyes doing that quick scan over my dress, my shoes, the fact that I was alone. Tonight is curated. There are people here who don't need to see complications. Complications, I repeated, letting it sit between us. Her smile tightened, like she'd practiced it in a mirror. "You know what I mean." I took a breath, slow. "Move." She didn't. She shifted slightly, blocking the doorway with her body instead of her hands, which somehow made it worse. Marianne appeared behind her, a little too fast, like she'd been listening. My mother's necklace caught the light when she leaned forward. "Bryn, honey," she started, voice low. "This isn't the time." I looked at her and felt something small in my chest go quiet. "You invited me." Marianne's eyes flicked toward the dining room, toward the people she didn't want to disappoint. "We just want a peaceful night," Sloane added, almost kindly. "Please don't do this here." For a second, I could hear my own pulse louder than the restaurant. We notice how often the word please gets used as a lock. I nodded once. Not agreement, just control. "I'm not leaving." Sloane's breath caught. Marianne's fingers pressed hard around her clutch, somewhere inside. A server laughed, and the sound landed wrong, like it didn't belong to anyone I knew anymore. If you're the kind of person who stays when you're told to disappear, this is one worth sticking with. Sloane didn't move, but she shifted her weight like she was settling in for a longer conversation. The door stayed closed behind her. I could see my reflection in the glass now, split in half by the frame. "This isn't about you," she said, lowering her voice. "It's about timing." I let out a small breath through my nose. Everything is always about timing when you don't want to say no out loud. Her jaw tightened. "You don't have to make it sound dramatic." Marianne stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume. The same one she'd worn for years. Familiar. Disarming. "Bryn," she murmured, touching my arm, then pulling her hand back like she wasn't sure she was allowed. "There are partners here, clients, people who don't know." The history, I echoed. "You mean the part where my fiancé left me and married my sister?" Sloane's eyes flashed. "That's not fair." Marianne looked pained. "Please, not here." I glanced past them, through the glass, at the private dining room I wasn't supposed to see. Linen-covered tables, crystal catching the light, people leaning in, laughing softly, like nothing in their lives had ever gone wrong. Sloane followed my gaze. "This room took weeks to arrange. We're hosting important guests. I was invited." I reminded her. She tilted her head again. That same practiced angle, as family, not as context. I felt something shift under my ribs. Not anger. Something colder. "So, I'm a footnote." "No," she said quickly. "You're just Marianne cut in, voice tight. We don't want anyone feeling uncomfortable. I looked at her then. Really looked. Who is anyone? She didn't answer. Her eyes slid away, toward the door, toward the people inside. Sloane folded her arms. We're asking you to do the mature thing. A server pushed through the side entrance behind them, balancing a tray. He nodded at Sloane, then paused when he saw me. His expression flickered, like recognition almost landed and then thought better of it. He stepped around us and disappeared inside. The door shut again. I straightened my shoulders. You're asking me to disappear quietly. Sloane's mouth pressed into a thin line. You always make this harder than it needs to be. Marianne tried again. Softer this time. Just for tonight. The words settled in my chest. Heavy. Just for tonight. Like tonight wasn't the point. Like tonight wasn't exactly the moment they'd chosen. I took a step forward. Sloane instinctively stepped back, then stopped herself. Lifting her chin, "Don't," she warned. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. "I'm staying." For a beat. No one spoke. The hum of the city filled the space between us. Somewhere inside, a glass clinked. We tend to notice how silence works harder than words when everyone is afraid of the same thing. Marianne swallowed. You're going to make people ask questions. I met her eyes. You should have let them. Standing there with Sloane's shoulder still blocking the door. I felt the past slide in without asking. It didn't arrive loudly. It never did. It showed up the way it always had in this family, wrapped in reasonable tones and lowered voices. Nathan had sounded the same the night he ended things. Calm, careful, like he was delivering news he'd practiced. We've grown in different directions, he'd said, sitting across from me at our kitchen table. He didn't touch his water, just kept his hands folded. I don't think we should force something that isn't working. I'd stared at the crack in the wood between us. You were looking at venues last week. He nodded once. I know. That was it. No argument. No confession. Just distance. Already built. A month later. My phone buzzed with a photo someone else sent me. Sloane and Nathan, standing too close at a charity event, smiling like they'd been practicing together. I didn't call either of them. I didn't have to. The message was clear. At Thanksgiving. They made it official. Sloane reached for Nathan's hand before she spoke, like she needed the anchor. We didn't plan for it to happen this way. Nathan looked at his plate. We didn't want anyone hurt. My father cleared his throat. Sometimes things unfold on their own. Marianne nodded quickly. What matters is that everyone moves forward. I remember the way the word everyone landed, like it included me, as long as I stayed quiet. After dinner, Marianne followed me into the kitchen. She kept her voice low, like someone might overhear us through the walls. Don't make this harder than it already is, she whispered. People are watching. I asked her to clarify. She didn't. I packed my apartment the next week. Nathan didn't come by. Sloane sent a text that said, I hope you understand. I didn't reply. For a while, they checked in. Short calls, neutral updates. How's work? Are you settling in? Then less, then nothing. Silence became the new arrangement. Back at the door of Holloway House, Sloane shifted again, impatience showing through the polish. You can't keep living in the past. I looked at her. You kept everything else. She flinched, then smoothed her expression. That's not fair. Marianne let out a small, tired sound. Bryn, please. I noticed then how tired she looked, not guilty, worn, like this conversation had been rehearsed too many times in her head. I didn't disappear, I said quietly. You just stopped looking. Peter's voice came from inside the restaurant, muffled through the door. He was laughing at something someone had said. The sound was easy, unburdened. Sloane followed my glance. Dad doesn't need this tonight. I nodded once. Neither did I. For a moment, none of us moved. The city noise wrapped around us. A car passed. Someone down the block argued into a phone. Marianne finally spoke. "We thought you wanted space." I met her eyes. "You never asked." Sloane's mouth opened, then closed again. She crossed her arms. Defensive now. "You always do this. You turn everything into a confrontation." I felt my chest tighten, then settle. "You turned it into silence." The door stayed shut, but something else had opened, slow and unavoidable, whether any of us wanted it to or not. I hadn't planned to say anything else, but the quiet stretched, heavy and awkward, and I felt the old instinct rise, the one that used to fill gaps so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. I didn't leave to punish anyone. I said, my voice sounded steadier than I felt, I left because staying meant pretending nothing happened. Sloane scoffed lightly. "You always make it sound dramatic." I shook my head. "I made it small." "You all did." Marianne's hands were clasped in front of her now, fingers rubbing together. "We thought you needed time. I needed honesty." That shut her up. The truth was, I hadn't vanished. I'd just stopped performing the version of myself that fit into their lives. I moved cities, took meetings no one knew about, answered emails under a different name. Not because I was hiding, but because I was tired of explaining myself to people who'd already decided who I was. The first restaurant almost didn't survive. The second one barely broke even. I learned how to read cash flow the hard way, learned which managers listened and which ones smiled and cut corners later, learned how to sit in a room and say less than everyone else and still leave with what I needed. None of that felt worth sharing with my family. Not when the last thing they'd asked me to do was disappear quietly. Sloane exhaled, sharp. "So this is what this is. You showing up to prove something." I met her eyes. "I showed up because you invited me." Marianne winced. "We didn't mean for it to turn into this. It turned into this when you asked me not to come inside." A couple walked past us, laughing, arms linked. The door opened briefly as someone stepped out to take a call. Warm light spilled onto the sidewalk, then vanished again. Sloane shifted, impatience cracking through. "You don't look like someone who's doing particularly well." I almost smiled. Almost. "You wouldn't know." She glanced at my coat, my shoes, the empty space beside me. "If you were, you wouldn't be standing here alone." "That's where you're wrong." Marianne took a small step toward me, then stopped herself. "Bryn, let's just get through tonight." I nodded slowly. "I am." From inside, a voice called Sloane's name. She turned instinctively, caught between irritation and obligation. "I'm not leaving," I said again, softer this time. "But I'm done asking." The words hung there, unthreatening and immovable, and for the first time that night, neither of them knew what to do with me. Sloane glanced back through the glass again, distracted now. Someone inside was waiting for her. I could tell by the way her shoulders tightened, like she was being pulled in two directions at once. "Just step away for a few minutes," she said. "We'll talk later." Later meant never. It always had. "I'm not hovering," I replied. "I'm standing where you told me to come." Marianne pressed her lips together, the same way she used to when a conversation wasn't going the way she hoped. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." I nodded. "That's what you said last time." Sloane's eyes snapped back to mine. "This isn't about you and me. It never is. Until it is." The door opened behind them and a man stepped out, phone to his ear, jacket draped over his arm. He slowed when he saw the three of us standing there, then angled away, voice low as he walked down the sidewalk. Sloane watched him go, irritation flickering across her face. "See, this is exactly what I mean. Someone seeing me. Someone noticing," she corrected. "Tonight is strategic." Marianne nodded along. "There are people here who matter." I let that sit for a second. I matter. Neither of them responded. Sloane crossed her arms, the gesture sharper now. "You don't understand how these rooms work." I almost laughed, caught it before it came out. I understand them better than you think. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me. Then you'd know why this isn't appropriate. Appropriate, I repeated. Standing outside my mother's birthday dinner, Marianne's voice softened. We just don't want things to get awkward. Awkward for who? Her eyes flicked toward the door again, toward the private room, toward the people she was protecting. A familiar quiet settled in my chest. Not hurt. Recognition. Sloane stepped closer, lowering her voice. You've built a life somewhere else. Let us have this. I met her halfway. You built this on pretending I didn't exist. Her mouth tightened. You left. I was pushed. For a moment. Something like doubt crossed her face. Then it hardened. If you don't go now, I'm going to ask security to handle it. The word hung there, heavier than she probably meant it to be. Marianne inhaled sharply. Sloane. What? She didn't look at our mother. I'm not doing this all night. I felt my pulse pick up, then slow. The decision had already been made. I'm staying, I said quietly. Sloane's laugh was short and disbelieving. You're embarrassing yourself. I shook my head. You're afraid of what happens if I don't. The door opened again. Laughter spilled out, louder this time. Someone called Sloane's name from inside, impatient. She turned, hand already on the handle, then looked back at me one last time. This is your last chance. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Sometimes the moment that changes everything doesn't announce itself. It just waits for someone to stop backing away. If you've ever been told to leave a room you were never supposed to lose, this is where it starts to turn. The door opened again, slower this time. A man stepped out, older than the others I'd seen come and go, hair silver at the temples, jacket still buttoned like he planned to walk right back in. He stopped when he saw me, not froze, not startled, just paused, like his brain was lining something up. His eyes dropped to my face, then lifted again. Bryn. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a question. It landed anyway. Sloane turned sharply. Do you know her? The man took a step closer, already reaching into his pocket for his phone, then stopping himself. We've been trying to connect all week. His attention stayed on me. Your counsel mentioned you were traveling. I was? I replied. My voice came out even. Familiar territory. Marianne's hand flew to her chest. I'm sorry. Who are you? He glanced at her briefly, polite but distracted. Daniel Foster. Harbor Point. Then back to me. We're waiting on your approval for the revised terms. Sloane let out a small, confused laugh. I think there's been a mistake. Daniel shook his head once. I don't think so. The space between us felt suddenly smaller. The city noise faded, replaced by the low hum from inside the restaurant. Someone laughed too loudly. A chair scraped. You said the numbers were close. He continued, lowering his voice. If we adjust the timeline, I think we can move. I'll review it tomorrow, I said. Have them send the update through Mercer's office. His eyebrows lifted slightly, impressed or relieved. Maybe both. Of course. Behind him, the door cracked open. A man I recognized from the meeting earlier that week leaned out, impatience written all over his face. Dan, we need you. Daniel held up a finger, eyes still on me. One moment. Sloane's face had gone pale. Mercer. The word slipped out of her mouth like she hadn't meant to say it. I didn't correct her. A security guard approached from inside, stopping short when he saw me. His posture shifted. Subtle. Professional. Ms. Mercer, he said, nodding. Your access is active. Would you like us to prepare the upstairs office? Sloane turned to Marianne. What is happening? Marianne's lips moved without sound. Daniel glanced between them, then back at me, something clicking into place. Holloway House was part of that acquisition. He smiled, faint and impressed. Quiet work. I gave a small nod. It was... The guard stepped aside, clearing the path without touching anyone. The gesture was practiced, not dramatic. Inside, a server looked out, recognition spreading across her face. She straightened instinctively. "Good evening." Sloane took a step back, like the ground had shifted under her. "You didn't say anything." I looked at her then. Really looked. "You didn't ask." Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then tucked it away. "We should get back," he said, already turning. "They'll be relieved." He paused, then added, "Happy to finally meet you in person." When he disappeared inside, the door closing softly behind him, the space went quiet again. Marianne exhaled. Shaky. "Bryn." Peter's voice came through the glass now, muffled but familiar, calling her name. He hadn't seen us yet. Sloane stared at me, eyes searching, defensive, scared. "How long?" I adjusted the strap of my bag. "Long enough." No one asked me to leave after that. The door opened wider this time. Not rushed, not defensive. Peter stepped out with a half smile still on his face. The kind he used when he thought the evening was going exactly as planned. Then he saw me. The smile stalled. Didn't disappear. Just stopped mid-motion. "Bryn." My name sounded heavier in his mouth than it used to. "I didn't know you were coming. I told Mom I would." I replied. Marianne moved toward him quickly, fingers curling into the sleeve of his jacket. "There's been a bit of confusion." He glanced at her hand, then back at me. "About what?" Before anyone could answer, Daniel Foster reappeared behind him, already adjusting his cufflinks. He nodded at Peter politely. "Great space you have here," Daniel said. "We were just talking numbers inside." Peter straightened automatically. "Yes. Well, we like to do things properly." Daniel's attention shifted to me again. "Ms. Mercer has a good eye for that." The silence that followed felt thicker than before. Peter looked between us, his brow creasing, pieces sliding into place whether he wanted them to or not. "Mercer," he repeated, as in Mercer Hospitality. I didn't rush to fill the gap. Daniel smiled. "Easy." "That's right." Peter's throat bobbed. "I wasn't aware." "No," I said gently. "You weren't?" Daniel checked his watch. "We should head back in." He paused, then added, "We'll follow up tomorrow." When he disappeared inside again, the door closing behind him, Peter stayed where he was. The city noise crept back in. A bus sighed at the corner. Someone laughed too loudly across the street. "You could have told us," he said finally. Not accusing. Stunned. "I could have." I agreed. Marianne stepped forward. Eyes glossy now. "We thought you were starting over." I nodded once. I did. Sloane stood a few feet away, arms wrapped around herself, watching everything unravel. "So all this time," she said quietly, "you were just letting us think I wasn't managing your thoughts." I said I was living my life. Peter rubbed his temple, the way he did when a deal went sideways. Why stay silent? I met his eyes. "You were comfortable that way." That landed harder than anything else had. He exhaled slowly. "I didn't mean I know." I said, "That's part of it." Marianne reached for my hand this time and didn't pull away. "We need to talk." I looked at the door, then back at them. Not tonight. Inside, someone called Peter's name. Impatient now. He hesitated, caught between obligation and something he hadn't planned for. "I'll be here," I added, not unkind. "I'm not disappearing." He nodded, once, then turned back toward the room he understood better. The door closed again, but it didn't shut me out this time. Nathan found me near the side entrance, where the light was softer and the noise from inside faded into something manageable. He looked the same. Careful posture, hands tucked into his coat pockets like he wasn't sure where to put them. "I didn't expect to see you here," he began. I nodded. "You never do." He winced, a small reaction, but real. I heard your name inside. Mercer. That's right. He took a breath, then let it out slowly. I know the firm. Everyone does. I just didn't connect it to you. I know. That's not... He stopped himself, then tried again. I should have asked. Back then, I should have been honest instead of letting things slide. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms more for balance than defense. You made a choice. I was scared, he said quietly, of being the one who fell behind, of marrying into something I couldn't keep up with. I watched his face as he spoke, waiting for the part where he tried to soften it. It didn't come. You didn't leave because you loved her, I said. You left because you thought I was standing still. He swallowed. I was wrong. Yes. There wasn't anything else to add. The space between us felt finished. Sloane approached after he walked away, her steps slower than usual. She didn't cross her arms this time, didn't smile. I didn't know how to stop comparing, she said. It started when we were kids. You were always ahead. I kept my voice level. You didn't need to catch up. She shook her head. I thought if I took something from you, I'd finally feel like myself. That was never going to work. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I'm sorry. I believed her. That surprised me. Thank you, I said. That's as far as this goes. She nodded, accepting it without pushing. A small mercy. When she left, the quiet settled again. Not the kind that presses down, the kind that holds. Some lines don't exist to punish anyone. They exist so things can finally stop moving in the wrong direction. I left before the cake was cut. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. The door opened easily this time, like it always had when I didn't need it to. Outside, the air felt cooler than I expected. I stood there for a moment, keys in my hand, listening to the city settle back into its usual rhythm. Cars passing, a voice drifting from a bar down the block, life continuing without needing to check in with me. Peter had caught my eye through the glass just before I turned away. He didn't wave. He didn't call out. He just nodded. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something quieter. Acknowledgement. Maybe I could live with that. I walked to my car alone. Not the kind of alone that feels like absence. The kind that feels like choice. Driving away. I realized something that surprised me. I didn't feel lighter because they finally saw me. I felt lighter because I no longer needed them to. Bryn Holloway had spent years trying to fit herself into rooms that required her to shrink first. Tonight, she stood still and let the room adjust, or not. Either way, she was done negotiating her place. I turned onto the main road and didn't look back. If this story stayed with you longer than you expected, you're not alone. We notice the quiet moments too.